Hey Scapers, and welcome to our latest RuneScape live stream. This is a very packed, awesome show coming up for you, where we're going to take you into the player avatar refresh project with some really special guests, a ton of amazing visuals, and so much to get your eyes on. It's going to be a hell of a show. Um, Before we go anywhere, just want to set some kind of precedents. We've got a ton to get through today. Like we're going to be up against it on time, which means we're not going to have a chance to talk about a lot of other topics. However, we know obviously a lot of you are probably in the chat, and we've seen a few already saying, "What about rare item tokens?" If you are interested in something and an update on that, we just put out a new statement on RuneScape.com and our This Week in RuneScape, and also on Reddit about what we're going to do about that. So if you're interested in that, we won't be covering it in the stream today. But we have put out an update on that you might want to take a look at either during the stream or after the stream. Now, we're going to keep moving from here, though, because like I said, we've got a ton to get through, and we have some really, really awesome guests with us. So I do want to shout out who we have with us today first. Give it up for Mod Iro, our art director.
Hey.
Mod Stead, the associate art director. And, of course, you know him, Mod Warden, executive producer for RuneScape.
Hello, YouTubes.
Thank you for offering some claps. It's always that awkward silence when you're doing streams. There's no live audience. All right, just before we dive in, I think we should probably kick things off with a little teaser image of what we're going to talk about if production's ready. And we'll just leave that in the background whilst we're having a little first initial chats. I love the film Noiris. It's awesome. Okay, Mod Warden. It's been a while, actually, since we've had you on. What's been going on with you as late? Since the message, especially.
Yeah, it's been a while. I kind of describe my life turned upside down quite a bit. I got ill in December with COVID. That's one of the reasons why we had to shift some of the Q&A streams around, and that led on to other complications. But I'm here. And it's about the now. So, and you see me sporting some darker brim glasses. I think everyone's saying that I'm your papa there, Mod Hooley. This is what you get to look forward to as you age.
Oh no, it's so true.
That's right.
I mean, hey, I won't say no to an executive producer position as I age. I'll take it.
I'm not trying to be hipster or anything. These are reading glasses. My eyesight's gotten extremely bad as some of the other things I went through over the last 6 weeks. So it's part of that, and you'll probably see me change that up a little more. But yeah, the other thing that's been keeping us really busy is all the 2021 planning. Everything from our budgets to our roadmaps to our initiatives, and kind of continuing on from some of the highlights we put in the end of year message. But that takes up a lot of time. And also, I guess everyone saw that we have a new parent company. This is all the work that happens behind the scenes, and one of the great messages that our parent company was talking about was the investment in RuneScape, right? So here we are talking about one of our key initiatives for the year, and and I just wanted to introduce you to our art director. His name's Jolion Webb. This was a key change we made throughout the year, and brought in as well. And you guys have know Matt Newstead probably for many years now, and it's always good to kind of refresh the faces on this. But today's discussion is really all about the avatar refresh, and we want to show you the work in progress on that. It was about a month ago that we mentioned it. You guys, the community responded and lit up all the theory crafting about it, and what we should focus on, and what their hopes are, and kind of tease some of that. So we want to show some of that progress. But we've been growing the team to support that, and leveling up some kind of key areas. We've hired a bunch of people. You can see from our career site, we've had a lot of positions open. That's been keeping us busy to help staff up for this initiative. But really, we looked at the Avatar initiative as the timing's right for it. As we were going into planning for this year, I was looking at a lot of different projects, and this is also our 20th anniversary. We wanted to kind of make a big, bold statement of what we're gonna progress on. I talked to a number of artists in the team about things that they were passionate about. James Teeples is one of our character artists that you guys see a lot of work from. I think his name's Mod JT. He provided a lot of initial inspiration for us kicking off this project. He did a lot of pre-production work. We have a number of other artists over the years that have been really trying to encouraging us to refresh our avatar, right? So that's just kind of putting it in context. But we, as I talked about growth, we need to be a lot more competitive and attractive with new players, right? The avatar, your hero, is at the center of everything that you do. We're lagging behind visually on where that is against, let's say, our current NPC art, for example. We've, I guess, was it about a year ago, we deprecated the Java client. One of the things we said to the community is our investment in our NXT engine and all the improvements that are going into our technology. Timing was kind of right to be able to make some headway on the avatar. We have a lot of performance improving tech, everything from multi-threaded rendering to graphic improvements to just being able to handle the back-end server elements with some technology that was built years and years ago, right? So that part played into this, and it's like our avatars really had lacked a lot of detail and fidelity, and that players are expecting. And then like one of the first things that when you land in world and go through the first time user experience is that bond you're starting to make with your character and hero, and it follows you for years, right? And so really, a better avatar just makes a better connection and bond with that, and then so we're just kind of moving from there, and we wanted to get some visual upgrades kind of teed up, and it's just the first part of many phases and elements, and we're going to have mod arrow and map speed. Arrow. I know it's my Canadianism maybe coming in.
Yeah.
In here. But
and
we
on
want
that
to
point,
continue to do this and kind of gauge reactions as we do this month to month, and we're going to keep coming back with updates like this. So, Julian, and maybe just mention a few words about yourself and your background and your journey so far at Jagex and Modsteed. Likewise, just kind of remind us how long you've been at Jagex and so on.
Right. Well, yeah, I'll kick off. I am super excited to be on one of the legendary Jagex live streams. It feels like, oh my gosh, I'm finally here. So I've been in Jagex for about 5 or 6 months now. Everyone's told me that it takes about 10 years to understand the game. So I'm about 9.5 years off. Modstead can talk more about the kind of history of things. I've been an artist in games for a long time. I was an illustrator for about 10 years, and then I joined the games industry in the late 90s. And MMOs are just the most fun. It's like you build a world and you go and have adventures in it. And I wanted to work on one, and there's not really a better one to work on than RuneScape. So that's kind of why I'm here. Early days for me. There's a huge world. There's 20 years of history. There's a lot of opportunity, and a lot of stuff that, as Mod Warden was saying, we want to evolve and push forward, and that's a journey for everyone. So I will be speaking, I'm sure, plenty over the years. But not going to fill airtime now. Modstead.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Maya. Mod Pyro. I got that right. As Mod Warden said, I've been here for a while. I joined in 2007. That was back when we were converting the game from sort of postage stamp to full screen. And I've had the sort of pleasure and opportunity to work on so many releases as well. I think the last bit of art that I actually produced for a release was for Priff, which was the Slayer dungeon for that. But I think my favourite piece that I worked on was probably for the Abbey, One Piercing Note. Yeah, I've been here a long time, but there's so much variety. The team is great, the community is great. It's just sort of dream job.
Awesome. All right, just before we get into the thick of things, because I know you're already keen to see what we're going to show off, and believe me, we're going to show a lot. I wouldn't say that without confidence, so it's going to be a ride. I think it's probably worth asking the question, why now? Why is this a project we're looking to do now and at this point in RuneScape's life?
Do you want me to take that?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. It's like the game is the world and the player. And the player, it's as simple as that. You've got a world to explore and you've got yourself. And if yourself, as you're reflected in the game, is not competitive, engaging, as sort of delightful as it can possibly be, then as world builders, we're missing a trick. And that's kind of where the heart of it lies. I mean, the character team is watching this now because they're super excited about this refresh. So there's a heart to it. And then there's it just makes sense. If this is one of the big appeals of your game, why would you not commercially and practically and kind of artistically want it to be the best it can be? So particularly in the 20th year, it all lines up. It's the right time to do it.
Also, Mod Warden, you want to add anything about... Oh, sorry. You go, Modstead.
Mod Warden, you mentioned lots of things coming online, which sort of helped to sort of set this up as well.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of the tech elements are there, and also it's just like it's about passion and timing and comparing with everything else that we're doing, right? And I just think the planets aligned on this one. I think it's a really good time to refresh it, and it's just like we were lagging behind, and it needs more attention.
Yeah, and obviously we've got mobile coming up as well, which is a big thing where a lot of players are going to be creating an adventure and stuff, and so we're going to have all these new players, and that's something we're thinking about as well, right?
Exactly.
Cool. Okay. So just before we go any further, this is where the small text on the screen goes past really quick. I'm not doing it in a really quick voice though, because I won't be able to do it. Firstly, we're giving a pretty unprecedented look, at least from my knowledge, inside the development today. That means we're going to run you through what is the aim of the project, what we're planning to achieve, the challenges we're facing, a whole bunch. And that means you're going to see a ton of work in progress stuff. So just bear in mind everything you see today is work in progress and not necessarily final. And we're going to be doing this often. We talked about the fact that we're going to show fairly often, but not just to gauge your feedback, but also so along the way you understand our goals, intentions, and limitations, starting with today, which will be kind of a more set up one, and you'll see plenty to set you up on that. So hopefully you really enjoy the step. I think I speak for everyone involved to say we've all been really excited putting this together. It's been a ton of work from the art team, and I think it's going to really show today. The only thing I want you to come into this and not expect is we're not giving this a release date. This is a project that's actively in development, but this isn't going to be something we're going to discuss today. Like always, we're going to announce a release date when we have a firm kind of, we know we can ship and commit to this date, as we do always as of late. But that's enough of my blabber. That's all the small print. That's all the things that get in the way of you and the awesome stuff. Let's get into a visual feast that the entire art team has put up for you today. So firstly, Iron instead. I called you Iron again. I knew I was going to do that. I wrote instead. What is the player avatar refresh exactly? And ultimately, what's your goal with this project we're showing today?
Well, it's a continual evolution. RuneScape has such a long history, and it has evolved and evolved and evolved. And I think sometimes people forget how much it has evolved even to the point it is now. Modstead put this absolutely killer image together of kind of where things have gone. Do you want to explain the different steps of this, Modstead?
Yeah, sure. So you've got RuneScape Classic, which was sprite-based. So they were all sort of hand-drawn sprites, built out a sprite sheet that would make it look like it's animating. Then we've got RuneScape Old School, which is actually the sort of avatar that I joined around the time that I joined. This is what the avatar looked like. And the main difference between them is the fidelity. You can see one's got less polygons, and polygons is the thing that makes up the avatar. So the old school RuneScape 1 has got quite strict poly budgets, and as RuneScape's engine has evolved over time, we've been able to sort of increase that fidelity. There's actually a few other steps in between this as well, so there's a few other versions, but the leap wasn't big enough to show. But this kind of just sort of illustrates the evolution of the avatar, and later on we'll show you what the next iteration is.
Exactly. I mean, the point is it's a living world and it needs to keep changing, and over time it gets more and more competitive. You want more and more fidelity. The technology gets better and better, and that's the journey that we're continuing. And it's a big journey, rather like at the beginning. If you'd seen the sprites and you'd projected forward, you'd have thought it was an overwhelming amount of work at the time. We're in a similar position now. There's an awful lot that we want to do going into the future, and we're planning the steps that prove out the possibility of that next move. There's a lot of challenges in this. The team is super motivated by it, and we're also very pragmatic. We want to do this in a way that proves things out early on and doesn't risk things, because the crazy thing about a live game is you're flying the plane and you cannot just swap the wings out on the flight. You've got to keep it in the air, and that makes it like a super multi-dimensional problem. But if we step from this is kind of where we have been. Let's just go out and have a look at the characters in Engine, if we can, just at the character creator. So to the point of thinking about what's the first area of attack for delivering value to the player and proving things out, we cannot make huge tech changes in one go. That impacts the whole game and risks it. And so what we looked for is, what's our entry point where we can deliver the most value, prove out things visually, give a meaningful refresh of things, and present it in a way that players will come to early, like returning players and new players, particularly with mobile coming on. And the initial character creator is the perfect point for that. As Modstead's showing, that this is the content that anyone who lands in RuneScape for the first time interacts with. And there's if you sum this up, all the assets in it, it comes to several hundred assets, but it breaks down mostly into about 30 costumes. Is it 32 costumes, Modstead, I think?
Yeah, so it's 16 male, 16 female outfits.
And then there's about 60 hairstyles when you sum the male and the female hair and the beards. This is the thing that you see first in the game, and it's probably not as competitive as we would like if you compare it to kind of other things. So it feels like a defined block of work, an ambitious block of work, but defined. We can tackle this without upending a lot of technology, and it's somewhere where it gives immediate value. You know, anyone can access this, and players who come into the game for the very first time will hit it. So if we could kind of leave the character creator and just go on to, you know, what the ambition is, the kind of goals then. And fundamentally, it's this. Now, we're going to walk you through the whole process over the next sort of 20, 30 minutes and give lots and lots of working examples. Fundamentally, what we are going to do is take the mesh and the texture assets that are contained in the character creator and do a visual refresh on them, so as they remain the same characters, they remain the same content at their heart, but they evolve, so they have exactly what Mod Warden was talking about, the sort of fidelity, the detail, the mood, to become competitive and engaging in our 20th year. And there's quite a number of steps on this, but we'll kind of walk you through the whole process. I'm not sure if anyone wants to chime in there. Is that?
No, I think
Yeah.
that's great. I mean, sorry, you go, Mod Warden.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's like, just to get to this starting point, it's like we spend a lot of time, obviously, in all the different social channels and community channels and everything, right? When we hear the player voice elevating, saying, "Hey, your character's starting to not look so great," especially when you brought us a lot of new recent art, post Dino Island era, especially, and so on, right? So those, some of those elements there. We also look at a lot of data behind the scenes, and we mentioned the 32 player kits, male and female. Like, we went from a data perspective, looked at which ones are being used the most to help define that starting point, and then also we love the memes that we get from our characters, and so on as well. But I think all of this is just kind of started bubbling up the conversation quite a bit more. And then I mentioned the team's passion as well. Has a lot of drive on this, and we've had a lot of artistic input on this for 4 years, right? But here we are today, creating a starting point. We describe it as a refresh rather than a 4.0 exercise or a complete redo. It's an evolutionary step, right? It's something new and important. For us to go beyond that would have to be a very significant change in direction, has everything with game engine implications, technology, and so on. So we're really kind of framing this as a refresh.
Yeah, and the benefit of, as well, just to what you talked to, Mod Warden, and correct me if I'm wrong, everyone, but it's also, this acts as a bit of a foundation, should that be the case as well, right? Like, this is a building block we can expand from.
It is exactly, and it's like Monero talked a lot about keeping the DNA of the different elements of the character kind of forward looking, but not kind of redoing it. At the same time, working in under constraints to geometry, character meshes, and so on. Like, we do have a lot of boundaries still to work in. For us to kind of move beyond that will be another step in that journey.
Cool. Yeah. So Iro, we talked a lot about the involvement of players, and actually this, a lot of people might not know, this has actually had player feedback in it from the very beginning of this project kicking off. Do you want to run us a little bit through about player voice and the place of player voice in this process?
Yeah, I think we can. I think our next slide is actually showing the production timeline, and we can talk a little bit about things that have happened several years ago. So, but before we do that, I talk about the absolute now. Our character team and I and Modstead read the Reddit threads all the time. We are super interested in the kind of thoughts and feedback on the characters, and that's actually already revved into the stuff we're going to present later on. So we are hungry for information. We kind of take that in all the time. Cutting back a little bit about this foundation laying that you were talking about, Mod Hooley, what we need to do is, this block of work is the tip of the wedge. It sort of like proves things are possible. If we manage to kind of drive it in, then we can widen it and do more, and widen it and do more. So we have to deliver something concrete and tangible and running in game, and then it unlocks other stuff. So there's going to be a long period where feedback is possible. What we're keen on at the beginning is, for sure, feedback and style evolution, but a very large part, we also want to prove out that it's possible, because then you can flex it afterwards. And so that kind of means that we super want feedback. We're listening to things, but also we need to be able to deliver that first thing to actually unlock stuff going forward. But if I run through just a little bit of the timeline from the past to the now to the future, there's been a lot of preparation in this, going back years and years and years. So Modstead has done a lot of work, probably, was it 2018, 2017, around that time. There was a lot of work on research, player focus groups, multiple concepts tested out, and in parallel, lots of technical investigations, and also the beginning of capacity planning we don't want to hurt the live game by pulling people off that to talk about the future. Like the game, the living world has to stay fed all the time. So we had a preparation period, and then we moved into an ideation period, and we'll show you the images and the kind of working process where we prove things out with sculpts, with reference, with paintovers, with concepts. And that broke down really into three main areas, which is the base body, which is the foundation for everything you do. Then the hair, which is super important for anything where you dress up a character, and surprisingly difficult. It's not like the little Lego hair, it's more complex. And then there's costumes, and the costumes, honestly, is one of the things I'm most excited about for the future. You get the base right, and then you can play dress up, and there's that world of fun to be had with it. So we'll walk you through that stuff. We're now currently at what I call the proof of concept stage, where we are building the things that test whether our assumptions work. Do these models work? Will the animation hold up? Does it break in game? And that's on the meshes, on the interaction of new and old content, and on the basics of the animation system. So we'll show you that as well. That then sets us up for delivery at scale. As I was saying, by the time you break down that character creator, there's a couple of hundred assets there. And that's a big ask for a team. So we need to get partners in and work with them on that. And to do that, you need to prove out your vision and make sure that your tech is working. And then after that, we start turning the handle on the delivery, which is getting to the point where we deliver on the target, which is a complete refresh on everything that you'd see in the character creator.
And this is just the beginning, so that's the really cool part.
Yeah, so to be clear, these are production milestones for what we're talking about as our goal, like this phase of any player avatar refresh, so the end goal that we talked about with, I believe you have a slide on it next to you, or if we already touched it, the kits, as we call them, and the base mesh, etc., right?
So what we thought we'd do, Modstead and I, is we'd just try and explain, as Mod Hooley was saying, what we want to do is be very transparent about what this block of work is, and as a sort of foundation part, like when you play a character in the game, the character is the character. You know, it's you. You've got that emotional connection. As a game developer, it is all that, but also under the hood, you've got the Haynes manual, the exploded view, the kind of like the often mind-numbing complexity of it. So. We wanted to just do a quick walk through where the character avatars are at the moment, so you understand how they're constructed. And it's sort of as you'd expect, they're modular. They come in pieces. The pieces all have to interact and fit together. And as you add new content into the game, it has to sit on that system and play nice with it. Could you back up one slide, please? There's all sorts of complexities to it. So, for example, when I joined the game, I had no idea that the male head and the female head would be built differently. Because if you look at the male head on his own, no male in RuneScape actually has a lower jaw. That's a completely separate part. And that's because the beard goes on the lower jaw, and the beard is a separate part in our system at the moment. So if you want a male character without a beard, you actually have to put on almost the invisible beard, which gives him the lower part of a jaw. And there's so many of these systems that actually build to the avatar as it is now. Yeah, if we could go forward again. So you've seen this slide already, which is the general complexity of the mesh we have at the moment. There's actually a reasonable amount of geometry there. Not as much as we'd like, though, and also we're forced to distribute it in a way that's not ideal for animation and deformation. And the reason for that, if you go on one slide, actually it's slightly different sequence. So this is how we set the UVs on the bodies. So UVs, if you've ever put up wallpaper in a room, or you've ever kind of done any clothes making, you've got this horrible thing where you're taking flat stuff and you're trying to fit it on a 3D object, and it's really mind-numbingly complex and fiddly to line up. Characters are that, like a lot of the artist's work is figuring out how we wrap the texture that gives kind of complexity. We'll talk more about that texture complexity, but how you wrap it around the character. Can you move on, please? Actually, go on one more. Right, yeah, this is a slide that shows vertex colors. So you saw that we have quite a lot of geometry, not as much as we'd want, but quite a lot. That geometry is laid out in quite a funny way. It looks quite spiky. It has strange patches of detail. And the reason we do that is it allows us to break up the model into different areas, and we can apply something called polygon colors. It's actually information that's stored on the little points, the vertices that make up the mesh, and that allows us to put shading on the character very, very cheaply, which has been a benefit in the past, but it comes as a cost because you have a slightly complex mesh and you have shading that's fixed in place. So we have a combination of meshes, textures, these strange geometry flows, and this additional markup of color, and then some other oddities like, for example, the beard sitting on the bottom half of the face and the bottom half of the face being missing on the male characters. So that's where we're starting from. And it's where we want to move on.
Cool. So that's a really comprehensive look at the player avatar kit. Sorry, Mod,
it's not even all of it. It's just if we
it's not
another slide. No, there's more.
I thought that was the last slide.
It's like,
there you go.
As we get into the animation, this is one of the kind of fascinating things about the kind of RuneScape engine and its history. The animation has a sort of bone system, like you would, if you imagine a puppet and the bones are like a human skeleton and move it around. It's typical that you actually have something that looks like a bone when you mark it up in most engines. In our engine, you actually have to mark up the surface of the model. And that markup of the surface of the model then tells it to imagine that there's a bone underneath. And then you animate that bone. So all those little pieces of text that you can see sitting on that guy's torso, they are all explaining what's going on under the skin so you can animate it. So that's another part of it. And then finally, when you see our character in game, you see the character, and then you see also the chat head. And the chat head is a separate model that's marked up in a separate way with separate content that sits on it. So we've got a quite complicated delivery pipeline on our characters, quite a lot of legacy tech in it, and quite a lot of friction. And a lot of content, obviously, that's built this way. And these are the things that we kind of want to evolve and move on from.
Yeah, and that's one of your biggest challenges as well, isn't it? Like having to deliver this new fidelity, these kind of refreshed player avatars, but within the existing technical systems for the reasons you talked about earlier, right?
Exactly. We've built a machine. The machine has 20 years of history, and we want to get that machine to do new things for us. And that is challenging. And that's why when I'm talking about like this tip of the wedge, this project, if we can prove we can get things in that look better and work in a simpler way and fit into the machinery, and we get a win, there's a sentiment win, there's a visual win with it, and we don't break anything, basically the wings don't come off, then it gives us courage and buy-in for attempting to remove some of the difficult things that are in the pipeline. So a future ambition would definitely be to move to a more flexible animation system. I mean, one of the reasons you see enormously great animation on some of our NPCs, and it's slightly harder for us to deliver on the avatar, is those are running two different systems, and the NPC system is a slightly more standard system that gives us a bit more flexibility and control. So that's awesome. A breakdown of kind of like, we've shown you the character creator, that's where we want to focus. We've shown you a little bit about actually what goes into making an avatar. And we showed you that little teaser image of where we were and where we want to go. And what Modstead and I wanted to do now was actually walk through the ideation process where we're figuring out how we make things look better, and then show you the body and then the hair and then the kind of costumes. To prove
so many reveals coming up. I'm so excited.
So it's probably a good time to drop out and start showing the ideation on the ideation images.
Ooh, teaser there.
Spoilers.
Spoilers. You want me to talk through these?
Yeah, just like tab through them, and we can go back and forward on this. Obviously, we're doing the COVID thing, so Modstead and I can't kind of wave at one another and go this and that.
Do you wanna put it into slideshow mode if you can, Modstead? Just bring it up a little bit bigger on the stream. Yeah.
Yeah, how's that?
That's better.
So yeah, this just kind of speaks to the kit pieces and where we've got various cuts in our kits. There's actually more cuts than this, but this is a simplified version.
Oh, I guess that is. We're doing it live.
No. So if we kind of jump straight in on first models, Model Warden mentioned James Teeples. So one of our character artists had put a lot of initial groundwork into modeling of the characters, and that's controlled by the proportions that we already have in game. That's an underlying foundation that we can't move from, and actually we're in a good place with that because the relative bone lengths were good choices back in the day. And so we've got initial sculpts going back kind of more than a year, and as we managed to unlock time on this project and brought it live, we started the process of looking at research, feeding in things that we'd heard from the focus group, and iterating on these models. And this is the kind of core process. Generally in game development, you get reference, you try and understand your audience, and then you use a combination of modeling and concept painting and paint overs and line work to iterate as fast as possible. And there's one golden truth. Like I've been working in games for, I don't know, 23 years, a long time. I have never got anything right first time ever. And I have also never met anyone else who gets things right first time. I'm sure they're out there, but the way you get things good is you try them and then you kick them around, then you try them again and you kick them around. And the more loops you can go through, the stronger your chance of success. And so this combination of modeling and then rapidly sketching over the top is actually a very, very fast way of doing it. And what happens with these iterations is, obviously, kind of as art director, I have kind of a reasonably strong say in this. It is a team project though. These things are shared up, they're live in the channels, everyone gets a look at them. Every 2 weeks when we do a full stream across the whole of RuneScape, these things are shown. They're very, very much public internal, and one of the things we're doing now is we're bringing them out to you as the kind of wider audience, so you can almost, if you like, you can see our dirty linen. You see the whole process. We're being like completely honest. This is how we walk through it. Let's leave the hair for now, Modstead, and let's go. Why don't we dive into the body ideation stuff? Have we got the concepts? Actually, let's go into ZBrush and have a look at the models there.
Is it ZBrush or ZBrush?
I think that's
it's a Z to an English person and a Z to a North American, I think. I know it's ZBrush because I worked in Canada, so I know you're the fields warden.
I always struggle with that. But could we put on one of the grey textures, please, Modstead?
Which ones?
Just one of the probably the grey material that shows. Yeah, that will actually. I'll go with the one you had of the first choice. Sorry, the one on far left, your startup material. Yeah, that one. Great. So what you're seeing here is the male and the female bodies, and the character that stands to the right, the male to the right and the female to the right, is the mesh that we have in game at the moment. And the character that you see to the left, the male and female, is the the models that we are making and taking into game. So we'll run you right through the whole process. Could you zoom in on the two males, please, Modstead? So those of you who are familiar with ZBrush, it's a kind of clay sculpting package. So it doesn't exactly reflect the model that you'll see in game. So we will show you that later on. As you can see here, in this package, we've got a crazy amount of density on the new models, but that's for modeling the surface. It's not what would run in game. So if you hide the wires again and we just look at them, what we are doing is we're taking our research, we're taking our player feedback, we're taking our early experiments, and we're trying to build an adventurer for our world. And we want an adventurer who will be someone who can go out into Gielinor, run around, be athletic and fit, and take on the world. And at the same time, be true to the spirit of the original game. So, as I said, we've got some matching on the proportions, so the overall general shape will be the same, but we want to flesh out that kind of detail and make things more elegant and more balanced. So if you look at the older model, for example, we've got this, if I'm honest, a really deeply unattractive pinch in at the elbow, which is not a kind of great look on the model. That's the kind of thing we'd want to remove. Could you go over to the female characters, please, Modstairs, and just put them side by side? You can see on the female character, I think it's particularly clear where the lack of geometry in the arm. It's a slender arm. It's not like some sort of super bulky arm. However, that lack of geometry means that it doesn't feel very subtle. It's kind of like got a lot of internal breakup in the form. And then we've got a few things which are really quite legacy issues. So could you turn a bit three-quarter profile, please? One of the things that was interesting in the Reddit threads, there were quite a lot of comments which were talking about the female chest and just going, look, I want my kind of athletic character that's going to run around the world, and they should feel like an athlete. They shouldn't feel too top heavy. That was very much chiming with the way the team was thinking already, and picking up the Reddit threads on the same thing kind of confirmed that thinking. So we're trying to do more than fill out details and round out form. We're trying to make things more elegant and more balanced as we kind of move forward, make them a little more modern. Could you just hide so we just see the male now, please, Modstead? We talked a little bit earlier about the polygon shadowing, the shading on the character. That was where we're taking the triangles on the surface and almost painting a value on them that gives them shading. And that's very lightweight and cheap. It was a sensible way to do things in the past, but it means that you do not get much subtlety in your lighting. And I said at the beginning, you've got your player character and you've got the world. That's the DNA of everything. And so as your character moves around the world and interacts with it, we want the light to bounce off them for it to be enjoyable traveling in new areas and kind of seeing that reflect on your character. And you can see there's a lot more form there already. Could you stick on one of the, actually, could you put on the gold shader, please, Modstead? Mm-hmm. And this becomes even more apparent if we put on like a special surface. If you look at the character on the left, there's a smooth roll of light across the kind of muscle shapes. Whereas on the character on the left, it's more faceted. And to be fair, that's partly because of the way it displays here. But the underlying truth is that there's less for the light to work against. And so this would be true of wet skin, or say this was a Roman centurion's breastplate that had kind of quite a lot of detailing on. Doing this underlying sculpt allows these things to percolate through the rest of the content. So the critical thing is we are looking to refresh our male and female characters, so as they become more balanced, they're a little more sympathetic in their kind of overall forms, and we're taking feedback on that, and that they just display at a higher fidelity. So we have the potential for people, players in game, to get a lot more enjoyment out of the way they kind of move and lighten the world. This is
So I'm.
Sorry.
No, you go. I was just gonna say this is looking absolutely incredible. I've been so excited for people to see this. So keep going. Let's go on to the next thing.
Right? Yeah.
It is a lot of detail, and we'll show how that detail ends up not being captured at a polygon level. It turns into map detail, and that allows it to run in the game in a light enough way to kind of make it plausible in games. But hopefully, we're demonstrating our ambition there. We're looking for having the same characters in the same proportions, but more elegant and more balanced and more detailed and more modern, and hopefully more appealing, so as a player, people make a stronger connection to them. The critical thing about the avatar sculpt, the body sculpt, is it lays the foundation for the dress up. So as we step through trying to prove out our process and our kind of visuals, the reason that we're moving as quickly as we can to establish the body shapes is that then unlocks the next bit, which is the other things that dress up on the character. So we'll get on to the costumes in a minute, but it's worth having a look at the hair. And the hair is quite a big sort of problem space. I sort of talked about it a little earlier. Modstead, do you want to just talk a little bit about a comparison of these, and then we can duck out and we can have a look at some of the design process that's behind up-resing, refreshing the hair?
So this is one of the hairstyles that we've picked just to work up as a visual target. We picked something that had a fair amount of volume to it. We wanted to pick something that we could start to get some flows through with the strands of hair. And the difference between the two is obviously like the old ones. It's very sort of polygonal, and we're using a lot of sort of almost like triangles just to get the shape. Whereas with the new hair, we're able to sort of create much more flowing strands, which is lovely. And
just as an observation for me as well, you're trying to keep that spirit, I'm guessing, as well, right? Like, a part of the refresh is kind of refreshing, not completely changing. Is that right for the hair as well?
Absolutely. So it's up-resing. We're not redesigning it. There's a little bit of reimagination in there, where we're sort of like, there's not a lot to work on here. We're going through a process of like, well, what do these bits actually look like in sort of high detail?
I think it's that kind of phrase, "Live your best life." Be your best self. We kind of want every part of this to be its best self, and to be fair to that hairstyle, it is quite triangular because of limitations from the past, and we want to kind of free it from that restriction, so it can be the best, bounciest, most flowing big hair it wants to be, which is what you need in a fantasy game, I feel. Modstead, could you unhide the male and then talk a little bit about the experiments we're doing with transferable hair?
By the way, whilst you do that, whilst you get that ready, just want to let everyone know, obviously normally we have a cut-off time of 6 p.m. We are able to run over a little bit today by maybe up to 15 minutes, so don't worry, we're going to get through everything, and thanks to our amazing production team who are holding down the fort and able to stick around a little bit longer to support. We didn't want to rush this, I didn't want to keep the pace up too fast, so we're still going to keep going.
I think some of the folks are having a hard time hearing Modstead as well.
Okay, I'll take most of the vocals then.
Yeah, if you want to cover.
I'll take this, Modstead, and we'll get through it quickly. So, as we showed earlier when we were showing the avatar parts, currently our hair is they're female hairstyles that sit on the female mesh, male on the male, and we want to break away from that in the future. We'd like to be able to make things swap around a good deal more. Now that has a machinery part of it. Our machinery is not built to let that happen at the moment, but it could in the future. And so this is stuff we're experimenting with there. This is what we'd hope to be able to do in the end, to actually take any hairstyle that we create and it just becomes avatar hair. It can be used by any avatar, and that would be facial hair and hair, I guess, or head hair, whatever you want to call it. So we could swap them around. So we are delivering to the machinery we have now, but we're also picking up some side experiments on things that we could get more options and more flexibility with in the future.
So to be clear, this isn't part of what you just showed, isn't part of what we expect to deliver at the end of this project, but it's a potential.
No, it's not the core of it. What it is the beginnings of a side experiment that wouldn't deliver now, but it could deliver in the future. But I think it was worth showing because it's part of the ambition. Is we want to make there's so much we want to do with the avatar system. I keep talking about this tip of the wedge. We've got to prove it's possible first. And if that works, then we can unlock more and more and more. But ultimately, we'd want something that's incredibly flexible, just allows players to express themselves really fully in the world. We talked about the body being the foundation for everything. So the body has to be in place before we can do the clothing, before we can do the hair. Let's just very quickly have a look at the ideation process on the hair so you understand how we actually make that step from the very triangular shape into something that's more complex. It starts with a lot of research and talk and modeling and paint overs. These are some reference boards I've put together, but the critical thing I wanted to have happen with the hair is that we had volumes and flows that felt recognizably informed by real hair. So they weren't limited to what we'd have had initially with just the triangles and the polygons. So could you step back a couple of slides, please, Modstead? And one more. So if you look at, this isn't one of our sculpts, if you look at that sculpt on the left, it's a lovely example. If you half close your eyes, even though it's a stylized sculpt, when you blur your eyes, you see shading that's very, very recognizably real. It has a truth to it, and that's the heart of what we wanted. So if we step forward a few more, and then again, what we do as what we're evolving as a process is if when we have a hairstyle that has a certain volume, a certain fill, but we don't have much information about it because it was an older mesh, it's low polygon, we're going go and find the reference for hair in the real world that flows like that. It's not an exact match for the style, but this is the thing that's the underlying ground truth. And then take that and turn it into a process for updating the hair. Could you step on one, please? Would you mind zooming in on this and just look at the, go back one, zoom in and start from the top. So there you see an original mesh, and it's got some rather triangular shapes, some strange outlines. So the actual design of the silhouette isn't particularly attractive. So as a process, first stage we do is let's refine that silhouette so it feels balanced, more varied, more organic. And then from that design silhouette, let's go and look at reference, if you go to stage 2, where we're trying to identify shapes that exist in real hairstyles. You know, if people choose a hairstyle, they are actually pretty invested in how all the parts of it flow. Go and find the reference from that, learn from it, and then pull it into the silhouette. Then look at the main volumes. And then we'd push on to the experiments with surfacing. And the reason that we go through these thought experiments ourselves is we need to understand things so as we can reach quality and iterate to quality, but also we have to be able to explain it to others, otherwise we can't scale the effort. So that work then goes into our first test sculpts. So we showed you the end of that, but we keep sculpting, and as a team, that's shared up as GIFs, as little videos, as files that are sent around. Can you step on, please? And then once we've got part of that sculpt, again, more line overs, exactly what you saw on the body. There's no magic to it. It's just repeated hard work thinking, where's the heart on this? Where's the visual, essence? You keep repeating, you keep feeding back, and the more loops you can do, generally the higher quality you get. And then
Awesome.
there's some
Just
markup.
in the interest of time, just to make sure, because I think we could all listen to you forever, Iro. Do you want to move on to the costumes, as you call them, just to make sure we can do those before our kind of final little
Let's do that,
surprise for
'cause
people that I think we shouldn't rush, because I think that's probably the most important bit.
let's go through the costumes relatively quickly then, and we can get to the other part. So Modstead, could you show the first test costume? Set it up in ZBrush, and then let's have a look at some of the reference imagery for that.
Yeah.
Everyone's saying they could listen to you for hours, by the way, Iro. We'd love to. Unfortunately, our production team, obviously for COVID safety, can't be in our studio beyond certain hours, so we do have a hard cut-off. Otherwise, I'm sure we'd let this run and run and run, to be honest, at this point.
Well, it's. I think I'm probably getting too excited, saying it's my first ever live stream here.
It's
So
awesome.
apologies for
Yeah,
that.
chat's sending all the love, Iro. You're well loved in chat.
Oh, thank you, thank you. So, just whilst Modstead is getting this teed up, the point of work with redelivering a refresh on the character creator is exactly as you say, Mod Hulu. We're not throwing this away and bringing a load of new things in. This stuff has been in the game a long time. It's loved. It's important to people. We're trying to let it be its best self. And so the proof out of that is on a first initial costume, and then we're scaling it up to run through many, many more. Modstead, could you show that first key image on the two builder costumes, the one that's all the reference gathering for it, please?
Yeah, just give me a sec. I'm having some technical difficulties.
It's all right. There's some people in chat actually asking, can we get a second installment of this Twitch, please? Yes, that's totally the plan. There will be more of these streams as we go through the project. So don't worry, this isn't a one and done. You're going to hear more in the future for sure.
So whilst we're waiting for this, it's like one of the reasons I was desperately keen to work on RuneScape is the costume design. I think there's an absolute world of possibility in this for the game. I mean, there's so much there already. I feel though we're kind of scratching the surface. We could do much, much, much more going forward. And particularly if we lay the foundations where we take some of the friction out of the process, so less energy is going on making it work, and more energy is going on making it beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Modstead, have you got that image?
The brush is not nice.
Oh no!
It was
trying to get it
the
to
one
appear
which
on a
is
main
the builder
monitor.
costume with all the notes.
I think I know which one you mean. This one?
There we
Yeah,
go.
exactly. That's perfect. Could you just zoom into that and pan around a little bit? But if we start on the top left. So this is the costume that we picked on as our walkthrough for proving out the process. It's one of the character creator costumes, and nominally it's a sort of blacksmith costume. I don't think it gives you a boost for that in the game in any way, but it was sort of designed with that as its underlying functionality. And we didn't get from the images on the left to the images on the right in just one go. It was lots and lots of research and lots of pick up on details. So could you pan down there, please, Modstead? So area by area by area, we are taking what exists on the model, respecting what's there, and then trying to make it more balanced, and also more balanced between the kind of male and the female versions of the model. There's a huge amount of detail there, but probably if you just zoom back out and look at the whole image, there's that amount of thinking that just goes into the parts on one costume. It's the avatar is made of many parts. Changing any one of those, even when it's a refresh where you keep the essence of it, takes a lot of thought, which is why we need to keep the scope focused at the beginning. And what happens with this is we go into paint over review, which I won't go into now because you've seen it already on the body and the hair. Modstead, is it okay to dive into ZBrush and have a look at the...
Yeah, it's alive again.
Hurrah!
Hey. Oh,
Okay.
it's just...
So, caveating this again, it's not an absolutely fair test because we're pulling a game model into ZBrush versus a ZBrush model. But what you are seeing is fundamentally the underlying difference in shape and design. So that's what we mean by the refresh of the costume. We're looking to bring detail, form, elegance, and a stronger sense of construction. So if you look at the way, for example, if you go to the kind of stomach protecting belt on the new version, if you spin around that, please, Modstead, and round to the back, we're trying to get a stronger sense of overlapping forms, and that if something fixes to the character, it's not been sprayed on them. It's like, actually, this was in a wardrobe or a box, and they managed to... Now, if it's a pair of trousers, they could stick their legs down it. If it was an apron, it has a belt. Like, everything has a kind of logic to it. And the joy of like wandering around Gielinor is you feel like after a while you're in a real world, and we don't want to break that by going, it's a real world, but your trousers are held up magically. You kind of want a belt to hold your trousers up. The magic in the world should be the magic, not like how your clothing goes there. And
even seeing the ruffles in the boots from the trousers itself, it's just a whole lot more refinement, and what you get is higher fidelity overall.
And if I'm not mistaken, a lot of the kind of direction on this was actually informed by the player research we did that you referred to at the start, right? Like around detailing and the importance of clear detail. Was that the pillar, if I recall?
I think the clear detailing is kind of our interpretation of it. The critical thing that came out of the player research was people want to have their time and experience respected being in a world. And that means, although there may be a lot of humor in the world, there's an underlying seriousness to being there. It's not a joke. It's not mucking about. It's not cartoony nonsense. It's not childish. There's a seriousness to it. Now, that seriousness doesn't mean there's a photographic reality or something like that, but it means that there's purpose, there's consequence, and there's underlying rules. And although it seems quite trivial, if you take something like your trousers magically not falling down because they don't have a belt, you're beginning to edge towards a world that has, maybe I'm extrapolating too much, but like if your trousers can't fall down because there's no belt there, you've got a world with no rules. And that is not a serious world. And that world would not be worth your attention. It's like, possibly I'm overselling it, but this is how I believe. It's like these things actually percolate out. They're really, really important. But then how do we make that convincing without it becoming crazy detailed so it hurts your eyes? Detail isn't the thing. It's like truth. A bit like when we were looking at the hair, and I was saying if you blur your eyes, you could see on that model that it lit the right way. Even when you saw it sharp, it actually had kind of quite stylized detail. It's like it meant the underlying form and construction was true. And that's what we are aiming to do with these things. We're not throwing away the old. We're not trashing it and reinventing it. We're letting it be its best version of itself. And we're using it as a laboratory for establishing rules that we want to take forward into plausible construction across the whole of the world.
Awesome. Now, I'm very conscious of time, so I
we
think
should press on.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to do this bit pretty quick because I think the end bit I would hate to have to cut off because
Okay,
the production team's leaving. So let's be
well, let's do
pretty
this.
quick here and then show our final
apologies,
hurrahs.
everyone. We've been showing things in ZBrush. We're now showing something in another program called Marmoset, which is a commercial viewer we use a lot. What you can see here is the polygons, the actual mesh that makes up the old and the new bodies. And what you can see from that is they're not wildly different, but they are a very different construction. So if you look at the new construction, there is more geometry there, but it's laid out in a much more even and smooth way. It's not having to break and follow form the way that we were doing originally. And what that allows us to do is we take the detail that exists in the very detailed sculpt and we turn that detail into textures, and then we put it on a much more regular and ordered mesh. And it gives us something that actually deforms better, has a better silhouette, and critically takes lighting much better. Modstead, could you swing the lighting around a little bit on this? So if you look at the original models on the left, they react to lighting, but there's not much internal detail. And the internal detail that is there is kind of fixed. Whereas if you look on the right-hand side, the new models, there's a dramatic change. Like form is revealed by the lighting, which is what happens in the real world. But we've shown you stuff in ZBrush and we've shown you stuff in Marmoset. We should really put our money where our mouth is and get into game.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
This is the thing we've been alluding to for anyone wondering.
And I would remind people that we kind of want to show you the warts and all stuff. Have we got time to show the range of movement, or should we just cut straight to the characters?
I think we can do the quick range of movement. I think the world needs to see this.
Okay. Yeah.
Just very, very quickly. Very, very quickly.
So the incredibly disturbing animations you're seeing are what are called range of movement animations, and you use them in games and in films to test whether your objects are going to animate at all well. And what you can see there is the old mesh and the new mesh, sadly without heads and feet, going through a range of movement. And these are as I was saying, we're trying to prove out that we can deliver this without breaking it, that it works in engine. And so as soon as we get anything we can test, we get it in. So this is a point before we've built all the costumes, before we've got the heads and that working, we're in and testing the bodies. There was a theory that this might be memeable. I don't know.
It's very memeable. It's definitely memeable. That's why we had to show it.
Come up with. But yeah, thank you.
Awesome. No, let's move on from these and show our other surprise, I guess.
Yeah, can we hide the scary people now? So this is the character that we were showing you the kind of concepts for and the kind of model for. We've got two versions of it, which Modstead is skillfully running on two separate kind of machines. So kudos for that. That'll do, I think. That works. Great. And both running in game. So let's have a look at like the changes we've made. Instead, could you swap things out, please?
Mm-hmm.
So there you see our first refreshed character. It's running on our existing technology. It's delivering the same content that we see in the character creator, and it's able to jig. Why not? Of course. And this is a first step to that global refresh across everything that sits in the character creator. A kind of journey that we want to take everyone on with us. And it works piece by piece. So we talked about those tests for making sure that the old and the new work together. Modstead, could you just put a combination so we have part old and part new? So there you see the new torso and the old legs, and that works. Can we have his new legs back, please? Great, thank you. And this character we can then add existing content to on top. Do you want to buff him up a little bit? Give him some equipment to go out into the world.
Oh.
You're not competent. Oh dear. So there you see the refreshed character plus a load of loot, and it's running in our existing systems. It's basically we're beginning to swap the wings out without crashing the plane. I mean, it's early stages. Like I said, it's the tip of the wedge of proving this out. But he's running in game. What would be great is that we've talked a lot about how the team wanted complexity in the form to balance up and make a more attractive character, but also to make the interaction with the world more rewarding. So we're in a fairly neutral lighting here. Modstead, could we hop somewhere with a bit more drama in the lighting, please?
We're only going to have time for the one scene as well, so pick wisely. Oh, where's he going? Oh, looks like Everlight to me. Hey.
Can you get him to look over to the moon and then get up to that? Great. And then zoom in on him. So if you look at our character now, he's rooted in the world because of that warm light that comes off the fire. And if you pan around him, just orbit the camera around him. As you get onto the side that's in the shadow side, we've got that lighting it's kind of bluer, it's cooler, it's warmer on the other side, but we're still getting form in all those areas. So there's a real sense of detail in the folds in the trousers. There's a sense of plausible muscles. And this is something that when you interact with the world, just makes that world more enjoyable. So if we look at our kind of new sort of hero, and we put him near a candle and spin around him there, or kind of walk him across to another one, that movement between light sources gives you just a much more rewarding sense of form. Like that form's revealed as you go into the warm light, as you move away from it. You get a sense of that directional lighting, and he sits in the world more clearly. And going right back to the first things we were saying about the avatar, you've got really two big components. There's the world that you explore, and there's yourself. And for it to be rewarding, you want a sense of interaction between that world and the avatar. So the avatar is not just prettiness or beauty or detail or that. The avatar's the thing that pegs you to the world. And the more we can do to make that as rewarding as possible, the better it is, for us as game developers, because we love that stuff. And for players as well, because it's making their commitment and time in the world kind of respected and reflected in the thing that represents them there, which is the avatar. So,
well,
what can I say?
Is there anything you want to say as a closing note?
Well, I've really enjoyed this. It's been fun. I mean, that's probably a bad thing. I've enjoyed talking.
No, it's a great thing. I think everyone enjoyed you talking, Mod Modstead, Mod Iro, I'm just going to say a massive thank you. Everyone who's been watching the chat, we really hope this gave you an amazing taste of the player avatar refresh that we're working on. We want to hear what you think, so head to Reddit, head to Twitter. We're looking everywhere. I know the example used was Reddit, but we're looking everywhere. Tweet us your thoughts, post in Facebook comments, wherever you post, we're looking. Let us know what you think. Your feedback's important to help kind of frame the process and make sure we're going in the right direction. I also want to just say a massive thank you to everyone involved in bringing the stream to life. We've been working on this for weeks. The art team put in a serious amount of effort, like gargantuan, to get this together, as did Modstead and Mod Iro. Thank you very much for joining us both today. I think everyone loved having you. Hope you enjoyed every second of it. Is there anything you want to say quickly just before we sign off?
Yeah, I'd actually say it's like it was a month ago that we mentioned this as a key project for us. Obviously, it's real. We're showing things working in Engine. That's super cool. Considerable amount of progress has been made, and we're going to keep showing the work off.
Awesome. Well, other than that, thank you very much for watching. Again, massive thanks, Iro Stead. It was a pleasure to have you on. And drop by tomorrow, because if you haven't had the news, Mod JD is moving on. He's found a new opportunity, and after a long stint at Jagex, he'll be sadly leaving us. So we're going to have a send-off stream with him tomorrow and one of his iconic quizzes. So please don't miss that out. Thank you to our production team for letting us stay late, and see you then. Take care.
Yes.